is on mute. I would love to see your faces though. If you want your video on, that would be so great. I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Amber Schultz. I'm the Education Division Administrator Assistant to the Fish and Wildlife Education Division at Nebraska Game and Parks Commission. And we are starting this year off with our Conservation Education Lunch and Learn series, which is a really exciting series bringing together different disciplinaries and studies and topics that help enhance and elevate environmental education and conservation education. I do have a co-host today, so I just want to give a shout out. Thank you to Grace Gard. Grace, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Grace Gard, and I work with Amber in the education division, doing a lot of aquatic education. So happy to be here and help out in any way I can.
Thank you, Grace. And she'll be monitoring the chat today. I'm hoping that for the next hour, there's a lot of really great information here, but I definitely really appreciate kind of that back and forth thought and discussion too. So if you have thoughts or questions or things like that, please put them in the chat. Grace will be monitoring and I'll kind of stop and look at them as well. All right, I think we're ready to get started. Really quick, I want to glance in the chat. I'm seeing people from South Dakota, Austin, Texas, Lincoln, Nebraska, Washington. Very cool. How exciting to be joining us today in snowy Lincoln, Nebraska. And someone said, will there be a recording? Yes, there will be. So if you're new to the Conservation Education Lunch and Learn series, after this, I will send a resource email to everybody who participated today. This will include, I will share my slides. I'll share any resources that I discuss and mention today. I will also share a link to the recording today, so you certainly can have those resources after this. All right. And just as a reminder, if you can keep your audio on mute as we move forward, and we'll get started. Okay, so benefits of environmental education on K through 12 students. Just a little bit background of myself in case you're new to this series or new to tuning in here. My name is Amber Schultz. Like I said, I'm the Assistant Division Administrator of a division at Nebraska Game and Parks Commission, which is our state wildlife agency. I'm also serving this year as the president of our Nebraska Alliance for Conservation and Environmental Education, which is a state affiliate group of the North American Association for Environmental Education. A lot of acronyms there, but we'll talk more about that later. I have a lot of different interests and background. Of course, first and foremost, I've been in the environmental education field for over 10 years now, so I have a lot of interest and passion for that. I'm really interested in inquiry-based learning, science communication, definitely ecological systems, just anything outdoors about the natural world. But my biggest interest, I would say, is connecting those two, my love of people and my love of nature, and kind of getting them together. My bachelor's degree is in fish and wildlife from the University of Nebraska, and I have a master's degree in teaching biological sciences from Miami University. And
Amber, just a quick thing.
Yeah.
I think maybe some are just having a slightly hard time hearing you. So just
so
you make sure you're nice and loud.
Thank you. I will speak up. I think I'm the only one in the office today, so I can be as loud as I want. Okay, so a little bit about our division. The Fish and Wildlife Education Division is a division of our Nebraska Game and Parks Commission, and our mission and vision and goal surrounds just increasing ecological literacy across the state. We do this by creating programming, curriculum, resource development, professional development opportunities, and we really are trying to increase our constituents' appreciation and understanding of our state's natural resources. So if you like this type of professional development opportunity or other fun resources surrounding ecological education, I'd suggest following us on Facebook or Instagram, or checking out our website there for more resources. Okay, so what is EE? What is environmental education? So a lot of the things that I'm going to be using today, actually all of it, is going to be derived from the North American Association for Environmental Education. If you are not familiar with that, if you are in the EE world at all, it's an incredible resource It's an organization that spans the continent that really elevates environmental education, creates resources, provides curriculum and material and professional development so that we can um, provide the best environmental education that we can to our students. And so this is their definitions. The definition here comes from this association. One second. Okay. So what is EE? This is a lot of text and I don't want to just read off, but I just would encourage you to kind of read through this too and see what stands out to you. So it's a process that helps individuals and communities and organizations learn about the environment. It also develops skills to investigate environment and make intelligent, informed decisions of how we can take care of it. EE has the power to transform lives and societies and communities by informing, inspiring, and motivating action. And it also can be a key tool in creating healthier and more civically engaged communities. And Grace, I just want to check with you. Can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you, but yeah, a few people are saying they're having a hard time. So I wonder, yeah, if you just do it with your computer microphone and not headphones. Hopefully that will help.
Yeah. How's this? Is that better?
Um, some say a little better. I
Oh
mean,
man.
I
Okay.
can hear you, but I'm in a really quiet room, so it probably depends.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, I'll carry on and just be as loud as I can without being obnoxious. I'll try to find that balance. So we know what EE is, but what about where is it? So environmental education programs can take place in many different settings. I saw some of you mention you're from nature centers, zoos, some are from botanical gardens. It can also take place in schools themselves, in neighborhoods, in communities, within state agencies or institutions. So it really can happen anywhere. And who does it serve? It's designed to meet the needs of diverse audiences and is often described as serving learners from both birth to gray. And so really it can be, it's not just for students, although I'll be speaking about that today. It can be implemented and put into action in any type of like audience level, including adults, early childhood, things like that. Next, I want to speak briefly about the core principles of environmental education. And then the point of today is I'm going to be looking at and just bringing to the surface this incredible study that's been done through the partnership with NAAAE on looking at the outcomes, the measurable outcomes of environmental education. And so we're going to get into that in the meat of the presentation. But before we do that, just in case there are people out there from falling on different spectrums of where you are in the environmental education career or interest or field, I'm going to go through some core principles of what EE is. And these principles come from the Guidelines of Excellence, which are documents that are also created by NAAAE, looking at best practices among environmental education in different settings. I'll speak more to that later. If you have questions on that and want to know more about it, I'll definitely share that resource. So one of the core principles is human well-being. Our well-being as humans is linked to environmental quality. Human systems share that interdependence with Earth systems. So we in our systems rely on the Earth systems, but we also have that impact too. So that interdependence is at play here, which means human well-being is also very important in environmental education. Another principle is connection to place. You've probably heard of place-based education before. The importance of this is that connecting students or people to their own spaces and local ecosystem can kind of provide that foundational knowledge and really that relationship to the natural world so they have that sense of belonging within that system. It's real, it's concrete, it's in their backyard, what they're learning about. Integrated and interdisciplinary. Disciplines from the natural sciences, social sciences, and humanities are interconnected through the environment. And so because of that, EE offers opportunities to integrate all these disciplines while learning and fostering a deeper understanding of concept and skills. Another principle is equitable for all lived experiences. Environmental education, when done well, best practices, is welcoming and respectful to all learners and embraces principles of fairness and justice. It's often designed to employ and engage people with different backgrounds and experiences, abilities, and perspectives. And it does that through cultural, relevant, and responsive instruction. Lifelong learning. And so not only do these practices kind of instill that lifelong learning skill, it's also done along the age spectrum as well. So things like promoting critical and creative thinking, decision making, and communication. These practices ensure active and meaningful learning both in school and over a lifetime. And then rooted and connected to the real world, learners develop knowledge and skills through direct experience with their community, the environment, and current environmental issues. Investigation, analysis, and problem solving are essential activities and are most effective when relevant to learners' lives and rooted in their own experience. So they're able to connect it to their real world, to what matters to them in their life. And that's what helps that learning kind of be meaningful and active for them. And the last three, the other principle is sustainability and stewardship. And so there's a lot of intention behind environmental education. It's not just teaching, for example, different species names for the sake of learning those things. Learning is reflected on the past, it examines the present, and it's oriented towards the future through focusing on environmental, social, and economic responsibility as drivers of individual, collective, and institutional choices. And so it really ties students and empowers them to be part of their community in those ways, and increases stewardship values, which is something that at least us at a state agency is really valuable to us. Systems and systems thinking. Systems thinking can help make sense of a large and complex world. Earth is a big, huge, complex system with a lot of different interacting systems within it, physical, chemical, biological. And also, additionally, humans in our own systems depend on that. So organizations, communities of animal and plants, and families can all be understood through the systems approach. By learning through this approach, rather than learning about the parts of the system only, we're better able to grasp relational concepts that help us understand the whole world. Lastly, environmental education is often learner-centered. So EE practitioners engage in education methods such as participatory learning and inquiry-based teaching. And these type of methods promote collaborative learning environments designed to meet students where they are and increase their intrinsic motivation for learning beyond the program. So that was a lot of talking about the core principles, but I hope either these are pretty familiar to you if you're an EE practitioner, or maybe it's something interesting to kind of think about of the bigger picture of EE. Are there any questions before I continue, Grace?
Nothing in the chat right now, but people can feel free to put anything in there.
All right. So the main point of today's presentation is I wanted to kind of bring to light an incredible literature review and study done demonstrating the empirical data and the outcomes of how environmental education is so impactful and powerful to students specifically. And this study was done through something called EE Works. I'll just glance over this. If you want to know more about this, I'll definitely send those resources. But essentially what this is, it's a partnership between NAAEE, like I mentioned, Stanford University, the University of California, Davis, and University of Florida. And what they've done is they have looked at answering this question: how can we demonstrate evidence-based outcomes of environmental education? They've done it through a few different ways. There are some really valuable reports that they've been able to come up with. The specific report today that I'm looking at is the benefits of environmental education on K through 12 students. They have additional reports, the impact of EE on conservation and the environment, the impact of EE on early childhood. There's some amazing reports there that I would suggest you check that out too, but today we'll focus on this one. And so how they went about this, just so you have that context as we go through what the key findings are, is they focused on peer-reviewed literature that measured K through 12 student outcomes. And they looked at between 1994 and 2013. They initially reviewed over 2,000 publication records, and then finally settled on 119 articles that qualified with that relevancy and quality that they were looking for. And so through that partnership, communication tools were developed for EE professionals, anybody that's involved with EE, whether you're an educator, you're involved in advocacy, in policy, you're a classroom teacher, you work at a nature center, anything like that, this tool will be really helpful for us to think about these things and communicate the benefits of EE. All right. And so I want you to think about this today as I just want to put this out there. I did not do this study. I had nothing to do with this study. This study is so incredible and powerful as a tool for advocacy that I want to be able to bring it to light and to surface through at least this first conservation education lunch and learn. And so my hope is we'll go over these benefits they found, and I want to be able to kind of discuss back and forth. If you see something cool that really stands out to you, or if you see something that resonates with you and you've seen in your own world of EE, feel free to share in the chat. But really my hope is that we just kind of bring this to surface, and then you know where these tools are that you can use in your own programs, in your own staff training, however it might be beneficial to you. Okay? All right, so benefits of EE on K through 12 students. So like I said, as we're going through these, kind of be thinking about your own experience. And again, feel free to put something in the chat as we're thinking about these, because it's a lot of data and a lot of great stuff. And so I don't want to be, I feel bad talking the whole time, but it's a lot of good stuff to pass along. So one of the first benefits that they've measured was an increased desire for learning. Environmental education encourages students to participate more in class. Students have reported greater satisfaction in that participatory learning when compared to traditional classroom lecture. One of the studies they highlighted was done in Spain. So over a 6-year period, 63 disruptive or low-performing secondary school students were integrated into this new 2-year garden-based environmental education program. They found the number of failing students decreased substantially, and the dropout rate was reduced from an initial 30% to 0 in some years. And so as I go through these benefits, I'll highlight some kind of like major patterns that they found, but I'll also talk about some of the specific studies that they used. And here's a quote from one of the teachers. In my 20 years of teaching before using the environmental-based approach, I heard, "Why are we learning this? When are we going to finish?" And now when we are out in the field and we're sorting macroinvertebrates, for example, I have to make them stop after 4 hours of lunch. And then they say we don't want to. So just kind of some like anecdote of how EE can really light that spark of curiosity and get students who maybe weren't interested in learning about the subject really excited, which is a skill that carries on outside of that classroom. Another benefit measured was an increase of 21st century learning skills. And so if you are in the education world, you might have heard this term before. 21st century learning skills are identified from education experts and business leaders to really have students have future success in life. And throughout this entire literature review, 90% of the studies that they went through reported increase in these skills. Some of these skills included strengthening students' creativity, enhancing their critical and analytical thinking skills, building leadership skills, and even helping with that teamwork, effectively collaborate amongst students. When controlling for factors like GPA, gender, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status, students who participated in environmental education programs scored significantly higher on measures of critical thinking skills and demonstrated significantly more likeliness to apply these skills in the future. One 9th grader in the study said, "This program has changed the way I feel about school. Now I realize I can pretty much do what anybody else can. I have a better view of what I can be in the future." Another benefit is increased knowledge and academic performance. I think often in my career of environmental education over the last 10 years, when I try to explain to family members or friends what I do, often they probably think, okay, cool, you are educating people about nature. And so often it's to describe the benefit of what we do as environmental educators, the first thing people think is we're just increasing knowledge. And that is incredibly true, and it's demonstrated here. But the cool thing is, through the study, you can see it's much more than just knowledge. However, the knowledge thing is also really important. So 98% of the studies demonstrated positive results in knowledge gains, which is a huge part of our outcome as environmental educators. Many of them even demonstrated students improve their test scores across subject areas where EE was in classrooms. We know that especially if you're a formal educator, the test scores are really important. And this was an incredible finding to me. I didn't realize that EE could actually improve test scores even. For example, one study comparing 77 schools found students in schools with EE consistently outperformed other schools, even across different subject areas on standardized tests like math, reading, writing, and listening comprehension. And one study in California, Texas, and Washington, and Iowa, where EE was integrated into that curriculum, they showed that students perform better on standardized mathematics assessments compared to other students in similar demographics and similar socioeconomic profiles without EE. So I don't know if this is a surprising result to anyone. Anne asked, the study mentioned California, Texas, Washington, Iowa integrate EE in the curriculum. Does Nebraska do that? Good question, Anne. There's a lot of integration of environmental education programs in Nebraska through many different partnerships that at least I'm aware of. And it seems like we're starting to see that more and more, which is a really good sign. A high school in Illinois successfully used EE to develop critical 21st century skills. Students in the program significantly outscored their peers in applying knowledge from science, technology, engineering, and math, and in mastery of critical thinking, environmental literacy, leadership, and communication skills. So this really is that interdisciplinary approach, knowledge gains across the board. One instructor noted, I realized I could increase students' knowledge, skills, and attitudes and beliefs in STEM subjects while increasing their environmental literacy at the same time. Another huge one is, and I'm really happy to see this being talked about more and more, and one of the benefits of environmental education is increased emotional and social development skills. Of all the studies that they reviewed in this literature review, 86% of the studies reported positive changes in students' emotional and social development skills. And these type of skills include self-esteem, autonomy, character development, maturity, empowerment, verbal communication, leadership, and ability to collaborate with others. So this is pretty powerful stuff here. And again, this is beyond just that knowledge gain that maybe people outside of this field traditionally think of when it comes to EE. One study that looked across northeastern US concluded EE's participatory methods can increase students' participation engagement in class. EE provides a unique opportunity to help students practice their argument assessment skills, critically reflect on their own views, and encourage an open-minded assessment of new information. Another one out of Athens, Greece, found increased levels of key emotional and social development parameters in students after conducting a community-based environmental learning project. And this is from that study in Greece, this quote. In addition to noting his students' increased self-confidence and feelings of empowerment, the teacher reported that his students were cooperating and respecting each other's opinions much more. The children had the chance to learn how to think critically, to be involved, to appreciate the importance of cooperative work, and to participate and take responsibility. Another huge benefit they found is a lot of teachers described it as an equalizer for all types of learners, which was really a practice of equity and inclusion as well. And so, for example, both teachers and parents noted that experimental components of EE provided students with ADHD and other learning disadvantages with opportunities to better understand complex concepts. Another study suggested in Spain, I spoke to this one, but it helped reduce the dropout rate for some of the lower performing students in Spain. Another one was in middle school students in Ohio demonstrated improved scientific processing skills and citizenship knowledge. And the really great thing about this is the lower achieving students made the most gains in this. And so that's why some of the teachers described it as an equalizer among different students and different abilities and different levels of learning. A year-long study of New York-based middle school teachers integrating EE into their traditional learning curriculum noted the hands-on aspect of environmental education is an equalizer for students with a variety of learning styles and learning abilities. The kids who have trouble learning and the kids who are super advanced, they're all having the same discussions, which is really cool. I'm not sure if anyone has experience seeing these kind of outcomes in your own programs. It's a really great benefit. Another benefit is a lasting impact on knowledge and attitudes. Many studies showed long-term retention of both ecological knowledge and attitude change towards civic engagement and stewardship. I know this is one that is always really hard to measure and to communicate. I know many of us perform program evaluations, and so it's really helpful information for us to kind of tweak how we do things and make sure we're doing things in the best way. But to get that long-term retention and to be able to measure that is really invaluable to communicate the power of environmental education. One of the studies in Indiana measured outcomes, I think a year later, after fourth graders just spent one day out on a field trip at the Great Smoky Mountains. And so they used that to measure their their knowledge of ecological principles a year later. And that demonstrated that they had long-term memory retention of not only the ecological principles, but environmental awareness and their understanding of the relationship between human action and environmental issues. They retain ecological knowledge longer than students using conventional curricula. So this was a really interesting study because it was just measuring the impact of one day outside on a field trip. And a year later, that still had an impact.
Hey, Amber.
Yeah.
There's a good question if you want to answer it now.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just looking at it. Are there
Yeah.
any programs that combine the ideas of EE and the standards of Common Core together since the majority of the states require testing based on Common Core? That was an excellent question. And yes, absolutely, there are national curriculums such as Project Wild, Project Wet, Project Learning Tree, things like that I know actually work to integrate exactly what you're speaking about, so that teachers in classrooms can integrate EE practices and methods and knowledge into their classroom while still maintaining and meeting those standards. So that's a really great question. Are there technology standards within these programs as well? That's another good question. I know at least for the curriculum development that we do within our division, we focus on the national science standards as much as we can. However, because there's such an interdisciplinary approach to environmental education, we have, like in our own world, I can just speak from my experience, have looked at applying it to also the different like social studies or different standards as well. And so I know it can be done. I'm not aware of one specifically, but I'm sure that they're out there. But that's a really great question. Yes, thank you. All right. Another study found that, again, another one-day field trip study measuring the impact of just one day outside on a field trip. These teachers actually let their 10th graders lead. So it was a field trip, but also the way they taught this program, they actually put it on their 10th graders to lead the learning experience for themselves with the support and guidance of the teacher. They went to botanical gardens with the intent on learning about climate change. And so a year later, they were surveyed for this as well. The students who participated consistently outperformed their non-participating peers in short and long-term knowledge retention. Their cognitive achievement was stable 6 weeks after the program. And so again, just even the impact of one day or one program of environmental education can have a tremendous impact. Of course, as much as we can, I know like within our division, we try to do more consistent programs to kind of build those relationships and keep that momentum. But even just one day can have an impact. It kind of makes me think about, like, if you think about your school years, do you remember the field trips that you went? I know that I remember some of the field trips. They stand out way more than any of just my day-to-day stuff, so it kind of speaks to that. I see someone.
It's a great story.
Okay, cool. Fawn, thanks for sharing. I'm going to read this. Fawn mentioned, my experience with kayaking youth camp for ages 13 through 17 demonstrated the equalizer effect. Oh, it's awesome. I had ADHD campers who had reputations for being difficult. I found that these campers were energetic, able to take on being in a team, assisting other campers, and lastly, were happy and wanted to be there all 4 days, ready, enthusiastic. That sounds amazing. This was a Maryland National Park and Planning Commission in the Black Hill Nature Center kayak camp, and it was new for the park system. We had parents sleeping in our parking lot in order to be the first in line. That's incredible. What a story. Thank you so much, Fawn. I know our division recently has taken on kayaking as another platform for environmental education in the last year or so, and we've seen some really similar anecdotes and stories speaking to exactly what you're talking about there. Some of the kids who maybe were a bit more unruly just like thrived in that environment. So that's very cool. Thanks for sharing. A year after their trip, this is from one of those studies I mentioned, over half of the children reported that they were more aware of their impact on the environment and were continuing to work on altering their behavior. These results would be impressive in a long-term program, but to see such results in one day is pretty mind-blowing, which I absolutely agree. The most important thing EE provides for students is passion and interest in learning. And that's from Dr. Doug Knapp, that study author. So I have zoomed through some of the measurable impacts they found on students through this study. Is there any lingering questions or thoughts on some of the things that you learned or saw through this? Hopefully it's helpful. I know it's a lot of information, but again, I'm just hoping to just share these studies with you in the communication tools so you can kind of digest them more and use them how they would help. Donna mentioned great study proving how the outdoors helps with how indoor information is comprehended. Yeah, and retained by students of all abilities. Very cool study. Yep. Beyond that, there were some benefits that they found just even beyond student benefits I wanted to highlight because I thought they were really great. Increased teacher confidence. This one, as I started to read this, I was not expecting this one. This is kind of cool. I've seen this in my own career as I've moved through my career in environmental education. I'm less boots on the ground working with students these days and more in the professional development realm. So have like the privilege to be able to teach new environmental educators, and I see this a lot. And I just thought, I don't know, it's just such a cool thing to see. But yeah, a 2-year study of middle school EE program in Ohio reported teachers are using significantly more innovative teaching practices as a result of participation in the program. So really a lot more of those methods of inquiry and interdisciplinary methods. Teachers also reported feeling more confident in their abilities to be effective teachers as a result of using EE's well-researched and designed curriculum guidelines. One teacher mentioned, I think I'm a better teacher because of environmental education. It has kind of completed the whole package. The framework unified all my best approaches and it made my instruction much easier. EE forces me to facilitate rather than dictate. That's a big one. Watching 25 young minds start to make their own discoveries, you just sit back and watch the magic work. And that's definitely been my experience too.
Amber, on that last study,
Yeah.
right before this one, do you know
Yeah.
what the date was at all? I know there's so many, but
Oh, yeah. I don't have the individual dates for these. I know that for the literature review process, they looked at studies between 1994 and 2013. And I think this literature review was published, I want to say in 2017 or 2019. But I can get you that full link after the presentation. All right, another benefit beyond the student. And I know that some people have the value of like, I just want to help students. I just want to see them succeed. Other stakeholders, even such as myself and our agency, we really are hoping also for conservation and stewardship outcomes as well, because we also seek to help, increase conservation across Nebraska. And so I just want to throw this out there. Another analysis they did that I don't have time to do in this presentation, but should be its own, is all the benefits they found of how EE supports conservation as well. And these are just the highlights. They found it does build knowledge, skills, and intentions to adopt environmental behaviors. They found that adopting pro-environmental behaviors in participants' personal lives, so it carried outside of the classroom or the program, and it really kind of changed students for their personal life as well. They found that taking direct environmental actions during the educational program, so there was often, not in all programs, but in many programs, there's direct environmental action. Think about your school garden, think about community cleanups, things like that. Community science participation, building community conservation capacity. This is a big one. It's helped empower not just the natural resource managers, but community members, students, and others to take part in these efforts as well. And there has been demonstrated measurably improving of the environment. Again, some of that direct action. 83% of the programs that seek to impact stewardship values and environmental behaviors successfully do so. And these values and behaviors are long lasting, and in many of the cases where long-term outcomes are measured. So again, incredible benefits for the students, surprising cool benefits for teachers, and of course, incredible benefits for conservation and the health of our environment as well. Although, like I said, this is its own study, and so I'd encourage you to look at that as well. I'll send that. What can we do with these results? Why is it important that we think about these things, especially us in this field? I thought a lot about this because when I first came across this study, I went to the NAAE conference last fall, and I heard some people speak about this, and I'm like, what? Why don't we know about this? This would be so beneficial for me in my position and many of the things that we're trying to do here in Nebraska. So these are the things I kind of thought about why this is important to understand. First and foremost, I think it serves as incredible validation. I know that in my career as an environmental education, often it is, I've heard a lot of different things. I've heard like, you just get to go hug trees and have fun with kids. And I've heard like lovely things. I've heard things like sometimes we could be glorified babysitters, all these different things. I've also heard, I'll just be honest on this one, you weren't, you didn't want to stick it out to be a scientist, so you just went to be an educator. So I've heard a lot of those things, but I know, and I'm sure that a lot of us here today who are in this field, they know that the work that we do is incredibly important. We've seen it on the students' faces. We've seen it in discussions. We've seen it in behavior change. And so I think this kind of analysis serves as just a really great validation for the work that we do and why it's important. So you can just take that. I hope that's helpful. Another one is advocacy. It's really important that we communicate these impacts. When we're thinking about leveraging support from our stakeholders, from funders, to fund these programs, when we think about communicating with the public school systems to be able to work and have better relationships with them to get EE in the classroom, that advocacy is important on all levels. And I really believe that anyone involved in environmental education can be an advocate for it. Whether you're a director of a nature center or you're a naturalist, we're all going to be our best advocates for this work. And then the last thing I thought about is just the impact and empowerment. So again, I have mentioned this. I want to be thinking beyond just knowledge gains. Environmental education serves an incredible purpose to create or to increase knowledge about the environment, but it's beyond that. The benefits expand beyond that. And so it's important that we understand and know that. And understand the depth of impact that it can have to empower us to leverage our programs for greater outcomes. Is there anything you all can think of why it's important that we kind of, understand these messages and results and be able to communicate these? Is this helpful in your world? What kind of things can you think of? And as I'm waiting, there might be some folks typing. Another thing I think about is, especially as we're training environmental educators who are coming up right now early in their career, just to be able to empower them as well with the work they do. Grant writing, Emily mentioned, absolutely, 100%. That's like, I don't know about everyone else, but that's like a large part of your job duties as an environmental educator is funding yourself as well. Yeah, that's good. Tara mentioned, I want to use it in our publicity for our environmental focused middle school and high school. Amazing. And you absolutely should, Tara. I'll send all these resources to everybody, but they have created one of their communication tools is a specific messaging guide, thinking about the different stakeholders. And so thinking about the values of each stakeholder and how we can communicate these results to meet those values, such as school districts is one of those stakeholders. Fawn mentioned with climate change coming on stronger, EE promotes systems approach and open mind for how change is the only constant in the natural world. Ooh, I really like that. That's very good. Thanks, Fawn. Yeah, this is good. I'll be thinking of that. Kind of in closing, learning. This is a quote from the study author of the main study. One of the study authors, Dr. Nicole Arduin. She is Stanford University's Graduate School of Education and Woods Institute for the Environment. So she's with them. She said, learning about the environment is just the tip of the iceberg. Environmental education gives students the knowledge and skills that help them succeed in school for years to come. And I really appreciate this graphic that they created in part of their communication tools, because I think I've mentioned this a few times, but it's really true. The thing on the top of the iceberg is what most people see or understand outside of this career, but there's all these other benefits that are just as, if not even more important. Anne mentioned these are important because it helps counteract the misconceptions about EE and EE principles, especially in Nebraska, when sometimes our natural flora and fauna are seen more as a resource instead of a living, breathing system that needs to be respected and protected. That's excellent, Anne. I really like how you said that. Thank you for sharing. And I do not want to doom and gloom whatsoever, so I'll zip through these next two slides. But in my mind, and in many people's minds, environmental education is a critical tool for challenging times. When I first started in this career, I was met again with messages of like, oh, this is like a fun, extra cool thing that we're doing. But really, it's positioning itself in more of the limelight of a critical tool to meet some of these challenging things that we're facing as humans and as part of the world. And one of the challenges we're facing is the conservation and planetary health challenges. This is just a quote from the UN report on biodiversity in 2019. Ecosystem species, wild populations, and local varieties and breeds of domesticated plants and animals are shrinking and deteriorating or vanishing. The essential interconnected web of life on Earth is getting smaller and increasingly frayed. This loss is a direct result of human activity and constitutes a direct threat to human well-being in all regions of the world. Additionally, with our challenging times, not only thinking about the challenges we face in conservation, but also human beings as well. Like I said, it's all connected and dependent upon each other. Specifically thinking about youth physical and mental wellness challenges that we're starting to see. The trend is kind of not going in a great direction. These are just some of the resources I listed here if you want to learn more, but there is a trend in increase in mental illnesses and mental health crises among youth. There's been an increase in behavioral learning barriers and challenges, increase in existing disparities in health services, and also with that, even a decrease in equitable access to green spaces. And I'm sure that if you're in this field, you've also heard about the ongoing crisis of that disproportional impacts of climate change and other environmental crises on vulnerable populations. So it's an inequitably being impacted. So these are real challenges that we do have to face. And I am not suggesting whatsoever that environmental education is this like beautiful panacea that's going to solve everything. But it really is, like I said, positioning itself as more and more of a critical tool. And I think that until recently, it's been an underrated tool. And I really feel that it serves, a critical interdisciplinary tool that can help both people and our planet alike. And so it's just something that we should be, if we're in this field, thinking about and feeling empowered that what we do is really important and critical our future and for the future of our kids as well. So quickly, I wanted to speak to these resources. If you're furiously writing down, I promise I will send all these as well in a nicely curated email so you can kind of click. But I just wanted to show and share these with you all. So like I said, EE Works is that partnership that I spoke to that did one of these analysis, or this analysis that I talked about today. The one I bolded right here, benefits of EE, that's the one I spoke about today. But these are the other ones that they've also done and they have communication tools on. So EE on conservation and environmental quality, the benefits of EE in nature connections in early childhood. They've even done one recently on effective climate change education strategies. That's really good. And they're currently working on one that speaks to community and citizen science, civic engagement, and positive youth development. So this is really beneficial tools that we can use in the environmental education career or field. I also spoke briefly about what I called guidelines of excellence. This is another initiative by NAAEE that is in partnership with other research and institutions developing best practices in environmental education. They have a lot of these, and these documents of best practices are so well written, and they're like 150 pages, and you can order them very cheaply, or you can download the PDF for free. So I just wanted to share that with everybody here. The one that I kind of pulled from today is the K through 12 environmental education programs best practices, but they also have the other ones here listed. Just as a note, NACE, which is the Nebraska Alliance for Conservation and Environmental Education, we actually received a grant to have the writer of these guidelines come down to Nebraska in March and put on a workshop for Nebraska participants. And in doing so, they'll also be training NACE board. And so NACE itself will be able to deliver these workshops coming very soon, hopefully this year. And so these kind of resources will be out and will be implemented in Nebraska, and we're really excited to be able to do that. And then the last shout out for those folks who are in Nebraska. If you're interested in these kind of topics and learning more and increasing your professional development and skills in environmental education, and if you haven't done this already, I would suggest registering for our first environmental education conference. It'll be held in a few weeks and at Mahoney State Park. And we have amazing keynote speakers and incredible presenters all day, and I'm hoping we learn a lot, and I'm really excited about this. Oh, and this conference is also open to those outside of Nebraska. Good job, Grace. Thank you. I did have someone from Rhode Island reach out, and apparently they're coming, so that's really exciting. I'll put a link to this again in that follow-up email. That is all I have today. I apologize. I do feel like I did a lot of talking, but I would love to hear from you, and I appreciate anyone sharing. Just be thinking about, what benefit resonated the most with you, or did you see some of these that we spoke about from this analysis? Have you seen those before in your programs, or just what additional thoughts or questions do you have? So I'm just gonna leave it open. We have a few minutes if anyone has any thoughts overall.
Yeah, Tim says, I'm constantly blown away by the impact of small, spontaneous learning opportunities on kids of all learning styles. EE can naturally, pun intended, open their world in ways other types of education can't, which I completely agree with. You see it all the time. So great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Tim. I agree with that as well. Any other thoughts or questions? I hope if you have any foot in the door at all in the world of environmental education, that you will at least leave this webinar, like give yourself a pat on the back, because you don't get a lot of those. And I hope you're proud of being in this field and the work that we do and the impact that we can have both on students and the youth that we meet and interact with, but also on our world and our communities too. And so I hope at the very least you can leave with that knowledge and understanding and appreciation for yourself. Okay, I think that's all. I see some smiling faces, so that's good. I hope you're patting yourselves on the back. That's excellent. Oh, here's a few questions. Nature is the teacher. Yes. Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, and I know we had someone earlier who had mentioned like they're looking into starting, an outdoor outreach type program for even like tribal members, so I think it's really cool to take a lot of these things that you've been talking about and use that in moving forward to advocate for, what that program is going to end up looking like. So
Yes, that's incredible. And I wish you luck with that. I'll get you these. If you look if you just Google NAAE and then EE Works, you're gonna find all these cool things. But I will also send that to you as well. And I hope you do well with that endeavor. Fawn mentioned our church preschool with 150 pre-K. I love that. Uses EE in its curriculum. They have an outdoor classroom, pollinator, milkweed gardens. They just achieved national accreditation. Oh, incredible. Way to go, Fawn. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, and all of those in Nebraska, stay safe and cozy today. The blizzard's coming, I guess. And we'll see you. I'll post also our next Conservation Lunch and Learn series. Actually, Grace Gard, who's our lovely co-host, will be presenting on some pretty incredible tools of teaching environmental education, teaching about wetlands specifically in Nebraska, and really creative communication tools. So that's going to be a really good one. Don't miss that. She'll have a wealth of knowledge to share as well. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.